Hello and welcome to the Giving Voice to Depression podcast. I'm Terry, the creator and co-host of this podcast. I've lived with depression most of my life, and I know how easy it can be to feel all alone in the experience. I'm not alone, and you aren't either.
And I'm Dr. Anita Sands, a licensed clinical psychologist with a number of my own diagnoses, all of which bring a certain amount of anxiety and depression along with them. There is great power in shared experiences. We share our own as we engage in intimate and candid conversations with our weekly guests, exploring different perspectives on and experiences with depression.
We keep it real because depression is real. We keep it hopeful because there truly is hope, in spite of what depression tells you. This podcast is produced in partnership with Recovery.com. Recovery.com provides resources and information for individuals seeking treatment for mental health or addiction issues. Its website is a fact-checked and vetted online platform of treatment centers to help individuals find the right path to recovery.
We release 2 new episodes a month, and the other weeks we will pull impactful stories from our archive of more than 400 episodes, stories that you may have missed if you're a newer listener.
This episode is from our earlier years, when I co-hosted with my sister Bridget.
Hi, Terry.
Hello, Bridget. So each season, we do what we call a ripple report. And the idea is that when you throw a pebble in the water, it doesn't just affect the spot where it lands, but it creates ripples that change an area around that pebble too. And the stories shared on our podcast are like that pebble.
We regularly get emails and messages telling us how the information in our guest stories help people to better understand and manage their own depression, or that they feel better equipped somehow to support their friend or family who's struggling.
This Ripple Report is a little bit different than the others we've had because the person sharing his story today was not a regular listener. He was, like many people, afraid that the podcast on depression would be depressing, which it is not.
It is not. But he, as a television news anchor and reporter, did see a story in the podcast. Mm-hmm. And in researching the piece, he did listen. And it got him thinking. Uh-huh. After several weeks of thinking, he's talking. Mm-hmm. Here is Ted Perry from the Fox station in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, giving his voice to depression publicly for the first time.
But I always vowed that if I was the guy who, and again, this is not a criticism of those people who have done that. I'm going to make that very clear. But I always said to myself, if I'm the guy who comes down with cancer or something, it's not going to be a public battle because that doesn't serve anyone. I made the exception here because I think what you're doing serves people. And I think depression is a little bit different because there's no shame in talking about your cancer. Perceived shame. Let me be clear about that. There's no perceived shame about talking about your battle with lupus or whatever it may be. So why should there be with this? And I think the people in your podcast, I think they're very brave. And there comes a point where you just can't sit on the sideline and say, look at all those brave people, good for them. So then I have made the decision with you, because I trust you and know you, to sort of say, yeah, we should talk about this. And I would like to be one more person on your roster of people who hopefully can give hope, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm at the point in my life where if you look at me differently or you think less of me, let the record show Terry just raised her middle finger, then that's on you and it's not on me. Mm-hmm. And, I don't want to be known as, oh my God, he's the guy with depression on the news. But you said something in my interview. This is not the, I'm sad I have depression podcast. This is there are ways out of it, and we need to help each other. So that's why I almost didn't do it, and that's why I did do it in one answer.
Ted's experience with depression has an indefinite start point, but he thinks it might have been his late teens, like it is for many.
I remember thinking back to being in college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I had great friends who are still my friends. And I was in a school that I always wanted to attend, and it something still didn't feel right. And I thought about transferring. I thought it's the greener grass syndrome. I'll transfer to the University of Illinois. My brother and sisters went there. And that always sounded fun. And it was my sister said, you're not going to be any happier at switching schools. Find out what's making you unhappy there.
It would be about a decade after his father's cancer diagnosis before Ted really investigated his unhappiness. And even then, when a friend encouraged him, he was very resistant.
And he said, how you doing with your dad? And I it's all so much. He's so far away and blah, blah. And I should see a shrink. And I just said it. He goes, it's not a half bad idea. And I said, what? And he goes, it's not a half bad idea. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, seeing a shrink. I go, well, what are you talking about? And he goes, you should maybe see a shrink. And I go, I'd never go see a shrink. And he said, why not? I go, I don't need that. He said, you just told me how sad you were and frustrated and stressed out. He goes, would it help you if I told you I saw a guy? I go, you? Like, this guy had his you-know-what together.
His friend shared his therapist's name, and Ted took the leap and made an appointment.
I was so nervous going in there. Like, I could have been getting my first prostate exam and not have been this nervous.
And what were you nervous about?
I had never talked about myself. I didn't know what was going on with me. I knew I was sad, and it was my father's impending death that was making me sad. But everybody has that, right? And he just said, tell me about your family. And I said, he goes, tell me about your dad. And my voice started to crack a little bit. He goes, is your dad dying? And it was like, whoa, and waterworks. I'm like, you're a sorcerer. How do you know this? Because Rob swears he hadn't told him anything about me.
Talking really helped, and Ted's grateful he learned that.
You are a better person and a stronger person for admitting you can't deal with this alone. So if the only person you ever talk to is a mental health professional, great, make that your first thing. And it's great because they have to listen to you. I have this, I don't want to interfere in. So I've opened up around friends, but I don't go to them. They're not my go-to people too often. They are there when I need them. But these people are paid, and there is help out there.
And Ted accessed that help again after his father's death. While still grieving, Ted moved to Milwaukee. New town, new friends, new life. Old intruder.
But I was starting a new job, and it was just a lot. I pride myself on not being sick, and I only call in if it's the Catholic guilt. If I'm sick, I'm really sick. I'm not sick going to a ball game or anything. I look back at my first couple of years. I was sick like 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And I wasn't sick. I was depressed. I remember waking up and going, what do I have to do to get back in bed today? So I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I thought nothing about calling in sick. And now I'm just horrified by that, that I did that.
You were sick.
I guess I was sick, right. But good point.
Yeah.
But to me, it's sick as cough, Thank you for saying that. I was sick. Yeah, you're right. I had never really thought about it like that. I was more feeling guilty that I did that. So I remember thinking, what do I have to do to get back into bed? How do I get through this day? I remember going to work, and that whole first year after my father's death was a blur.
Ted's quick to point out that he wasn't always out of it, not always in that deep, dark hole those of us with depression are familiar with. But it was certainly more often than he found acceptable. So he tried different therapists, a prescription, but it wasn't the right fit.
I don't know when it clicked that I allowed myself to say to myself and myself only, you know what, dude, you're depressed, and there's got to be a way.
Ted's way, like many of ours, is multifaceted. It includes a therapist he sees for what he calls tune-ups, and an antidepressant that does work for him.
People think they're happy pills. It just says to you, all right, here's what you need to do. It's kind of like says, all right, it levels your chemicals. Mm-hmm. If I go off Wellbutrin, am I dangerous? Am I going, no, of course not. Life becomes more sloggy and weighted, and my motivation to do things. So this isn't an energizer. It's not like I'm on constant 5-hour energy. It just allows me to go on in a pretty normal thing and not let the highs and lows get me.
They're not happy pills, and they're not a singular solution. We each need to assemble personalized toolboxes that we can access in the dark times.
There were times when I needed every tool at my disposal to get through the day. That was exercise, that was a little medication, reflection, meditation, and religion. nothing groundbreaking here. If you're an exercise person, do it more than you even want to. If you're not an exercise person, start. Yeah. Start. Walk. Go shoot free throws. Play Frisbee golf. Find something that really makes you happy. I got a kayak. I put a kayak in the Milwaukee River. I disappear for an hour and a half. I'm a new man, Get a pet. I've always been a dog guy. They make you get out. They make you run. There's an unconditional love there, all right? If you don't get a dog, get a cat. If you can't get a cat, get a bird, whatever.
In the mental health world, those tools are referred to as protective factors. Faith, effective health care, a pet. They're all on the long list of reasons to hang on. Things that pull people through the dark times. Another huge one is hope.
People, their initial reaction often is, you're always cracking jokes. You're the last guy in the world. Well, you don't know me when I'm home alone, and so full of doubt, and that's the thing. And that's the worst thing about depression, is that it takes away hope, and that's the thing that I hope someone would take away from this, is that please, there's like a little ember of hope burning. Blow on it, stoke it, feed it, because you do get through this. There is an other side of this. It might take a while, but it's so worth it. I'm not exactly where I am in my life, where I thought I'd be, but I'm really happy these days. I'm open and I'm acknowledged, and it took some awful, awful days and stints and months to get there. It just kind of adds up sometimes, but all that darkness, there's a crack in it so that light can come in. And I think that's when I turned a corner, when I said, God, I've been through the worst. I know this is the worst I'm ever going to be. I can't sleep. I can't eat well. I lost 25 pounds a couple of years ago just from being so down in it. And I looked fabulous, by the way. I would kill for that diet again. But not that way. Yeah, not that way.
Ted says even in the darkness, he never crossed over into hopelessness.
The tank was never empty, but it was low, and it was running on fumes sometimes. But I know, and this is what I credit my Catholicism to, there's always hope. It's Corinthians, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. That's fine for a wedding, all right? I've read that at so many weddings, and I always want to go, don't underestimate hope, though. Hope's going to be important. I know the Bible says love is the most important. I will put hope right up there.
It's a big step sharing about a highly stigmatized illness. And disclosure can have negative consequences. But so can not being open about our struggles.
Did you intentionally hide it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. That's a good question. Oh, I didn't bring it up for years around people.
But on purpose, because of
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, this is my regret on this. I'm not speaking out earlier. I used it as a cop-out. I have been fortunate enough to be in romantic relationships with some absolutely stellar women. Mm-hmm. And I destroyed everyone by backing out because I didn't feel good enough or worthy enough. And so you sabotage it in weird ways. And that's my biggest regret, is that, I didn't let people in. I just used it. I'm like, this isn't going to work. I'm depressed. This isn't going to work.
Were you thinking that you were depressed because of them or because of the relationship, or just
no?
That's
I know.
A part of you weren't.
No. I never blamed that. No. Good question. They weren't responsible for that. I just didn't want to burden them with it, and I didn't trust them enough to say, here's my thing. You want to help me deal with this? Now I'm at the point where I would. Obviously, I'm talking to you publicly about having been treated for depression.
And though he's not a fan of the term, that belief we're a burden, not good enough, or that we have to hide an aspect of ourselves to be lovable, is a byproduct of stigma.
I was ashamed of it. This is a freaking character flaw. It's not a character flaw. It took me a couple of years, and I call that wasted time. I would like to, again, it's in the rearview mirror. I hope it stays that way. I just think that, there's wasted time there. And that's what makes me mad, in that I wasted some relationships and I wasted some, all my friends are still friends. I didn't lose any friends over it, but I did lose relationships, and that's on me entirely. Except for the following people.
That's funny.
We'll start with the A's. Abby? No, I never dated an Abby.
Oh, I love it.
That wasted time that he was talking about. Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, you don't get it back, whether it's just time you spent beating up on yourself or in bed or, there's so many ways we lose time when we're in it.
And that word sloggy I've never heard before, but it really does impart the heaviness and the weightedness of it all.
It absolutely does. So the feature report that Ted did on Giving Voice to Depression is posted on both our Facebook page and our website, givingvoicetodepression.com, and it's worth taking a look at. He obviously speaks very well, and he did a really nice job explaining what we do and why.
He did, and thank you for that, Ted, and thank you for dispensing hope today.
Thanks, Ted, and bye, Bridge.
Bye, Terry.
We truly hope that our podcast brings a little more understanding, helps you better articulate and reflect on your own experience with depression, or better understand how to support someone else who is struggling.
If this episode has been of comfort or value to you, know that there are hundreds of others like it in our archive, which you can easily find at our website, givingvoicetodepression.com. And remember, if you're struggling, speak up, even if it's hard. If someone else is struggling, take the time to listen.